Sports Professor Rick Horrow inside the $1.3 trillion business of sports with your top stories on the record, brought to you by SEICon Sports Entertainment Innovation, the conference, the best in the business, in association with USA Today. We'll start with the top issues of the week, 1 through 5, and then have a public-private sector collaboration panel, the best in the business at SEICon, with Oklahoma City Mayor David Holt, Convention and Visitors Bureau President Steve Hill, Vegas, and A's President Marc Badain, all about putting together facilities, the best in the business, as we said. But let's start with the top 5 from last week. Number 1, college football set for its most expensive roster year ever. By the way, it used to be that schools needed about $15 million or so to be competitive in the NIL market. This year, at least $25 million, and Ohio State, Texas, and others said to be 30, 35, maybe even 40 million, and a loophole that allows pre-deal payments outside standard reporting to be structured, meaning it's going to go even higher. Sooner or later, the $2 billion, $3 billion NIL number is just a start. Welcome to the new world of college football. That's number 1. Number 2, the Guardians extend the leaves of Clase and Ortiz amid ongoing MLB betting investigation. They were initially placed on leave July 3. There were some issues around balls and strikes. Were they intentionally bet on or not? They decided to extend, with the Players Association agreement, indefinitely beyond the end of August. Players refraining from comment, Players Association as well. This could be the first sign that the gambling enforcement issues are very serious at the macro and micro level. That's number 2. Number 3, the Sun effect. Son Heung-min, the top Korean soccer player, a blockbuster LAFC cultural move. The outlay to the 2025 transfer number jumped 25 to 75% 1 year to $336 million, and in LA, demand exploded, tickets selling out. Social media engagement surged. Media coverage increased nearly 6-fold, and the Koreatown community embracing this like no other. Maybe this is what the MLS needed, beyond Messi, beyond Beckham, and the like. And that's number 3. Number 4, users filed class action suits after California labels daily fantasy illegal. California users of Underdog Sports and Boom Fantasy filed proposed class action lawsuits in federal court after the AG in California said these are illegal. The operators misrepresented the legality of these contests and hold them accountable for the monetary losses. Though the issue is not necessarily whether it's legal or not. The issue is that the operators did not inform the investors of the risk, but yet the issue is the same. Fantasy, as we know it in California, clearly up in question, and that's number 4. And finally, number 5, the Browns in Ohio continue their talks over stadium height. 58 feet may imperil the $2.4 billion dome stadium. The Ohio Department of Transportation, ODOT, and the FAA looking at stadium options. I was involved in that in Phoenix. One of the reasons why the stadium for the Cardinals is in Glendale, not near Sky Harbor Airport. Same issue in SoFi in LA. Same issue all across the country. The FAA has a cone of landing you should take seriously. We need to see how that all shakes out. Well, all of this has one thing in common. Facilities clearly at the top end of the food chain. It's the house with which revenue is being built all over the country. Sean Garrity and the Circle Group recognized that as they put together their blockbuster SEICon conference in Las Vegas, number 2 in July, going to be number 3 next year, bigger than ever. But the issues that I was lucky enough to inspire and keynote as a panel, Mayor David Holt, Marc Badain, and Steve Hill, all talking about public-private sector collaborations. What is the operational and generational legacy of facilities? What about building consensus? How do you do that? How do you deal with major events? Sports as big business, an arms race, Vegas versus the rest of the world. What lessons have you learned about community engagement? OKC, this event was held right after the Thunder wins, the biggest gathering in Oklahoma City history. And Steve Hill with the Vegas CVB, David Holt presided over the parade, and now the head of the U.S. Conference of Mayors for a year, talking about all of these issues. The year of public-private partnership and facilities, ushering in his presidency with the U.S. Conference of Mayors. And then what about the future? David Holt, we know David Holt. We've had him as a major guest, 38th mayor of Oklahoma City, the youngest mayor elected in 2018 with nearly 80% of the vote. The current president of the U.S. Conference of Mayors, dean of the OCU School of Law, the youngest mayor of a city with over 500,000 residents since 1923, and the first Native American, the Osage Nation, to hold the office. He clearly has a lot to say as part of this panel. Steve Hill, the CEO and president of the Vegas Convention and Visitors Bureau, the entity that funds many, if not all, infrastructure projects around Vegas. The oversight of the $2 billion Allegiant Stadium, the Vegas Stadium Authority, and he's involved in that. Expansion in 2021 of the major West Hall expansion of their Civic Center. Couldn't have Vegas as a convention town without that. The 2027 College Football National Championship, the NCAA Final Four in 2028, last year's Super Bowl, by the way, clearly a sports and entertainment capital, and Steve Hill talks about that. And finally, and maybe most important in this context, Marc Badain, the president of the A's, the Oakland A's, the Sacramento A's, the Vegas A's, $4 billion integrated resort and arena project in Vegas. The Oakview Group Las Vegas, when he served as president there, very important. But even more important and preliminary to that, he served as 3 decades involved with the Oakland Raiders, moving to Vegas, successful completion of Allegiant Stadium. He joined the finance department of the Raiders in '95, appointed CFO in 2004. Bottom line is there is nobody better to talk about public-private partnerships in Vegas and Oklahoma City and what it does for a community than the combination of David Holt, Steve Hill, and Marc Badain. Here they are now.
Brought your own hype video. That's awesome.
Hype video of Vegas and hype video of Steve. He's the CEO and president of Las Vegas Visitor and Convention Authority. He's also the chairman of the Vegas Stadium Authority. It owns the $2 billion Allegiant Stadium under Steve's leadership. $1 billion West Hall expansion and a $600 million renovation of the legacy campus of the Convention Center, clearly. The 4-mile Las Vegas monorail in 2020, and obviously the list of events, the 2027 College Football Playoff National Championship, 2022 Draft, the Final Four in 28, Formula One Las Vegas Grand Prix, sports and entertainment capital of around here, let's say. I was going to say of the U.S., but we have some competitive issues there as far as that's concerned. But he has a history of public-private partnerships. So Steve is obviously an important member of this panel. And let's start right in. Mayor Holt, pretty damn successful couple of weeks, but successful tenure as well. Let's talk about generational legacy from all of you, starting with you. You've been involved in Oklahoma City since you grew up, the MAPS plan, et cetera. The proudest accomplishment, and how has MAPS been able to allow Oklahoma City to tell the story to the outside world?
Yeah, well, thank you, Rick, and thank you all for having me here. It's a pleasure to be with you, and thanks for the very kind award. We got a little time here, so I'm gonna tell the Oklahoma City story, especially relative to the way we have leveraged sports. And because you've alluded to MAPS, and I have no presumption that everybody in this room even knows what we're talking about. So MAPS is an acronym in Oklahoma City. It's a brand well known there that stands for Metropolitan Area Projects. And back in the 80s and early 90s, Oklahoma City was going through an economic depression. We were, stagnant in population growth, if not shrinking, and recognized finally that, if we really wanted to make some progress, we had to invest in our quality of life and entertainment and downtown and sports. And Rick actually was the lead consultant with our then mayor, Ron Norick, in hatching this brand of MAPS and wrapping together a bunch of different projects. And not all of them were sports. I mean, arts and a downtown library and a canal through our entertainment district. But there was the arena that just finished hosting the NBA Finals. There was a AAA baseball stadium downtown in our entertainment district. And it wasn't a sports initiative at the time, but it's worth noting because it evolved into one. Dams on our river, because we were sick of mowing it twice a year. So we just wanted to have some water. We thought that would be aesthetically pleasing. At the same time, separate from MAPS, our community had secured a presence in softball. Is actually the proceeds of the 1984 Olympics that had been distributed to governing bodies was the seed capital to build a softball stadium in Oklahoma City, which was at this point now the home of USA Softball. And we were sort of imagining ourselves as the softball capital of the world. So I say all that to say that from that point forward, in what was sort of just parts of strategies and investing in our city, really has become, to this point, as we sit here today, obviously a very comprehensive sports strategy that has taken a market that is still 42nd largest market. We're the 20th largest city, so that's how many people live in your city, limits. But when you take the suburbs, we're the 42nd largest market, which kind of makes us sort of on the bubble in the world of Major League Professional Sports, because all the leagues have 30 or 32 teams, and so 42nd is not going to cut it from a free market perspective. But we've leveraged sports to sort of pull ourselves up into that conversation and kind of punch above our weight. And obviously, the first step was getting some of the infrastructure in place, which we had to supply. No private sector interest was going to build all that stuff for us. So by having that arena, we were able to be in position when Hurricane Katrina hit New Orleans in 2005 to host the Hornets, now known as the Pelicans, but at the time the Hornets, for 2 years, and basically audition for the NBA. I've never seen a city before or since get an audition, but we got that opportunity. That set the stage for a group of our businessmen to go buy a team in Seattle, relocate them ultimately to Oklahoma City, and become the Thunder in 2008. That alone sort of changed our trajectory as a city, kind of elevating us into a different tier and a different conversation. Sort of that first team that you get from the MLB, NBA, or NFL, and maybe to a lesser extent NHL and MLS, for a city is the closest thing we have in America to bestowing a blue ribbon on our top cities, and we finally had that blue ribbon. But simultaneously, we were seeing the growth of the Women's College World Series, which we had gotten when nobody else wanted it, but ESPN elevated it and turned it into this big event. And then what we had done with the river in MAPS 1 turned into a paddle sport community that we began to invest in through later iterations of MAPS. And ultimately we thought, well, let's really go in with it. Let's build a whitewater facility next to it. So we have all the paddle sport capabilities. And that turns into the opportunity to host 6 events and an entire sport in the 2028 Los Angeles Olympics, canoe slalom, because we have the only whitewater facility west of the Mississippi. That opens a conversation about, well, if we're going to do that, why don't we just go ahead and have softball in Oklahoma City as well? Because we've invested in, through public dollars now that have gone on top of the original 1984 dollars, now we have the best softball stadium and the biggest softball stadium in the world by 2.5 times. So now as we sit here, we've got, we have the Olympics coming, 7 events, 2 full sports, the only city outside of Southern California that has a full sport of the Olympics, and we have 2. We're the NBA champs. We've got the Women's College World Series park till at least 2035. We've made an investment. We've made a recommitment. We're building a new arena, which you'll see the design of a week from today, which is going to be an exciting rollout. A $1 billion new arena funded through another public vote that got 71% in Oklahoma City 2 years ago. And that's going to secure the Thunder till at least 2053. So it's really turned into, I think, when you look at mid-sized cities using sports to kind of elevate yourselves, I just don't think there's anybody that has pioneered it better than Oklahoma City, and it's thrust us into a national and international conversation that we would never have been in if not for the power of sports.
This first topic of generational legacy, there's nobody better to carry the flag after other mayors have done this in Oklahoma City than David Holt. Clearly, as Tom Cochran alluded to, the chief of staff when the prior mayor of Oklahoma, one of the prior mayors of Oklahoma City, Mick Cornett, was the president of the U.S. Conference of Mayors in 17, 18, 16, 17, somewhere around there, and will be a national advocate, seeing him operate at the national convention in Tampa 3 weeks ago, and listening to Mayor Holt's dispensing of advice to other mayors. It's clearly not gratuitous and it's not self-serving. It's what other mayors can hear about as they put together their own infrastructure partnerships all over the country. So it's a right time, U.S. Conference of Mayors, right time for him to receive the award, but obviously the right time to continue to tell the story. And as you said earlier, the fact that Thunder won the championship certainly didn't hurt, other than giving the day award to everybody on the Thunder and beyond. You have your work to do now in July and August, quite clearly.
He's alluding to, I announced the day for every single one of our 18 players on the roster. And today, by the way, happy Adam Flagler Day for those.
Adam Flag Day. Congratulations to Oklahoma City. Happy Adam Flag Day. Steve Hill, your kind of generational legacy perspective of helping to turn Vegas from a fairly sleepy, my words, gambling-dominated desert town into a world sports capital in fairly short order.
I just run around taking credit for what Marc does. We showed that video because I often say that Las Vegas is the easiest product in the world to sell. And we show that just to prove that that's right. I feel very fortunate to be here and to be a part of what's going on in sports. This is a city that has built some pretty remarkable things. We are a platform for events, we're a platform for sports teams, but we're really a platform for people with great ideas to come and make them real. And we've been able to do that for decades, and lately we've been able to do that for professional sports. Really sports, and it's not dissimilar to Oklahoma City in that we're not really all that big a city. And I moved here 38 years ago from Dayton, Ohio, and Dayton was the same size as Las Vegas when I moved here 38 years ago, and Dayton's not quite as big as when I left 38 years ago, and Vegas is 4.5 times the size it is now, or was then. and just growing into the population base and the media base that it takes in order to host professional sports franchises was important. Making the country comfortable with gambling was important, and now, any place in the country you can go. You can do it on your couch, or you can drive 30 miles in any direction and find some place to do it. And the regulation that Nevada has modeled for the rest of the country over the years has helped make that happen. And then Bill Foley came along with Golden Knights, Mark Davis came along with the Raiders, and but people forget Mark Davis made that commitment before the Golden Knights had hit the ice, well before they had hit the ice, almost 18 months. And those two owners making that commitment, deciding to come to Las Vegas, really launched Las Vegas as a sports community. And then we worked together to build Allegiant Stadium, and I've said this often too, the two most transformational projects for Las Vegas were the Mirage Hotel, 37 years ago, opened in 1989, was the first integrated resort, was the model for what came for the next 35 years in Las Vegas and what's happened around the world. And Allegiant Stadium. Allegiant Stadium allowed Las Vegas to grow up. Certainly the NFL and the Raiders provide that blue ribbon or housekeeping seal of approval that only comes really with sports and sports at that level. But that stadium has allowed us to host the world's biggest events. And these two things aren't functionally related, but I have said we wouldn't have gotten Formula One if we had not built Allegiant Stadium. Just the way the world looked at Las Vegas and the way that Las Vegas was able to show off what it could do changed because we had the venue to do it in.
Marc Badain started as training camp intern with the Raiders in '91. Back in the, were those the Lyle Alzado days, or was that a little dated?
More like the Howie Long days.
Sorry, I'm a little older, as you might expect. But he is in charge of generational legacy as well. Has the opportunity to rise through that organization, spend over 3 decades, 7 years as president, but also have the very unique opportunity of being the president of a second franchise, the A's, who are destined to be in Las Vegas in the next couple of years. So you have a couple of generational legacy stories to tell, one that's happened and one that's happening. So go ahead.
Well, if you think I'm hated in Oakland, you should send this guy to Seattle.
Yeah, right.
I guess we can spend a couple minutes on Allegiant, and obviously I spent the duration of my career growing up at the Raider organization, and you heard the word transformational, I think, a couple of times. And when you work in sports, you're either on the team side, which has a certain path and a certain level of excitement, or you're on the business side. And to me, when people ask me about their career and their career path, if you're going to get into the business side of sports, you want to be a part of a stadium project. It's obviously a sexy industry, it's obviously a fun industry, but ultimately you want to be a part of a project where you learn as much as you can on a project like Allegiant. And we spent a good 10 years failing, trying to come up with a solution in the Bay Area, and we had culpability on that as well. It wasn't where you just point one finger at one person. We had to take some responsibility there. But trying to come up with the right solution led us to a number of opportunities and a number of municipalities and a number of different perspectives and ways of potentially doing a public-private partnership. And then we spent a year working with the Chargers on a project in Los Angeles, really taking a mass league politics, design, construction, sales. So when that ultimately got awarded to the Rams, what ultimately became SoFi, we were ready. We just didn't know where that opportunity was, and then Las Vegas came really out of nowhere. Nobody had really thought about it. As Steve mentioned, the Knights weren't here yet. Las Vegas was always a great sports town. That's what people sort of forget. It was always the home of championship boxing. UNLV has always had a tremendous amount of success here. UFC was born and raised here. And even when you look back at the first iteration of the XFL, go back 25 years, they drew 25,000 people out to the Silver Bowl, I think it was called at the time. And so you could see that there was a passionate fan base here, both of locals who were very proud of this community, as well as a lot of the folks that had moved here. So Vegas comes out of nowhere, and the topic is public-private partnerships. So you talk about why it made sense and how that deal came together. I mean, you could take out your iPhone right now and do a little bit of math if you wanted to. How many people went to Allegiant last year? Like 2 million?
Yeah,
1,000,007?
yeah.
Round up.
Yeah.
Call it 2 million people. How many were from out of town? Half?
Nearly 775,000
All right,
people.
so you have 775,000 people. They come here for an average of 2.5 days. I don't know what the average daily room rate is. Call it $200, right? Start doing all this math. You don't have to do it, right? I'll do it for you. And they stay in a hotel and they pay a hotel tax of 13.38%. And when you do the math on that, the incremental nights of people just coming to Allegiant and staying in a hotel and paying the tax is about $50 million a year.
Right.
Now, those people are also paying $200 to the hotel. They're also, I assume they're going to eat. I assume they're going to do something. I assume they're going to gamble. So all that incremental visitation, because of this market and what this market means, the math made a lot of sense. So, and it exceeded every expectation, correct? It's exceeded every projection that was made 7, 8, 9 years ago. This market is not like every other market. Some markets can't support that kind of investment based on just tourism alone. Sometimes it's a land contribution, sometimes it's a TIF district type of mentality. But as a municipality, when you're looking at it, you heard the mayor talk about the transformational nature of sports. You have to look at it as a community and say, what does it add to the people that live there, to the residents and to the visitors? And it's not just always going to be on a spreadsheet, and it's not always going to be something quantifiable. There's people here from Syracuse, right? Anyone here from Syracuse? There you go. I grew up in Rochester. Like, what do the Buffalo Bills mean to Western New York? Not financially, but what do they mean to Western New York? They mean a lot. And so if you took the Buffalo Bills out of Western New York, the part of that area dies. So what is that worth? What is that worth to the community? And in this market, you're talking about visitation and tourism and heads and beds and people coming here. And so bringing sports and building stadiums like Allegiant Stadium and the athletics ballpark that we're building just meshes with what this community needs and what this community wants and what this community can support. So from a public-private standpoint, there's really no better model. I don't think one exists.
There's no easier model.
There's no easier model,
Yeah.
Correct. So when you talk about what baseball means, baseball is a great sport in terms of total number of people. It has a global reach, a better global reach than the NFL, a better global reach than the NBA. All the other leagues are trying to catch up, but in Asia, baseball is dominant, and in South America and Hispanic culture in countries, it's massive. And so it also fits a part of the calendar that is relatively slow here, right? There's not a ton of conventions during the summer. There's more leisure visitation. And so by bringing those events here during the summer, you again augment exactly what Vegas needs at the right time. In terms of it being generational for me, like I said, when I started my remarks here, building something special, that was pretty high praise to get from Steve, that the Mirage and then Allegiant Stadium. I'd probably bump the Sphere above Allegiant Stadium, but Mick Akers, you better not write that. But I just think the Sphere's something pretty special. But we're going to build another special piece of infrastructure. The design of the building is fabulous. It's just beautiful. It's one of those beautiful buildings I've ever seen. And when John and Sandy reached about taking the job, I wanted to make sure it was real, because it doesn't look real. It certainly doesn't look like any baseball park I've ever seen. It's beautiful. And then when you get on the inside, I've used this line before, the A's, in addition to the Raiders, had the benefit of a blessing and a curse, which is going last. So you've had a chance to see what every other team has done. I'm sure you've done this in Oklahoma City. You had an arena that was 25 years old, it was aging, and you said, we're going to build something new, and you started to look around and see what everybody else did and cherry pick the best parts. We're getting to do that. We're building a spectacular building. It's going to be great for families, it's going to be great for kids, it's going to be great for the tourism visitation here, and I'm really excited to be a part of it.
You guys have the ability to rely on metrics as well as vision to prove the respective Vegas cases. Oklahoma City started a bit differently and had to do some things to inspire a vision that might not otherwise have been there. And let's talk about selling the vision for a second, David. The idea of how Maps morphed into a brand kind of like Kleenex and Band-Aid in Oklahoma City. Everybody knows what it means. It's worth 20 points automatically when you want to sell something also, and it required a great deal of effort to get there. Successes of prior referenda. Is it because Oklahoma City feels like they've been passed over from other things, now they can control their destiny? Is it part of the generational obligation to continue to build infrastructure? Is it part of a vision that nobody else had? How difficult is it to continue that vision, and what do you think is unique about all of this?
So in OKC, if you think about the arena we're playing in today, which was a part of the 1993 package, and the arena that we're going to open in 2028, which was approved 2 years ago, it's an interesting contrast because there are different cities where those arenas passed. I mean, the one in 1993 was desperate. I mean, and that initiative only passed with 53%. I mean, I should probably step back and say, I mean, every city is going to have their own legal parameters and their own state dynamics. In Oklahoma, if you want to spend that kind of money, you're going to have to pass a tax. And if you want to pass a tax, you have to take it to the voters. There's no other way. And so, obviously, building the public support and the public case has always been a part of everything we've done in Oklahoma City these last 30 years. And we haven't failed anything in the last 30 years. But in 1993, we kind of began that momentum, and it passed barely. In 2023, when we were looking at the end of our lease with the Thunder, and we'd come so far and had maybe a different view of ourselves, not nearly as insecure as we were in 1993, not nearly as desperate, you did have a different dynamic. I mean, I recognized that complacency had become our enemy, a certain entitlement had become our enemy. You know, now you have people, nobody in 1993 said, well, let's just make the owners pay for it. There were no owners. What owners? Yeah. You know, but now once you have a team, suddenly we shouldn't pay for these things anymore. We have people to do that now, you know. And of course, in the 42nd largest market, you know, I don't have my phone ringing off the hook with other NBA teams, you know, outbidding each other to do something in OKC, right? I only have one team that's even willing to talk to us. So the leverage dynamic is what it is. And so ultimately, we still were in the position where we were going to have to do the vast majority of this project. The team is putting $50 million into it, and some people in our community might say, well, that's not enough. And I would say, well, that's $50 million more than anyone else has ever put in any of our projects. You know, we always did this all on our own in the past. And so we still had to sell the vast majority of this as a taxpayer-funded initiative. And so I spent 2 years, really, of my life making my residents into amateur business, sports business experts, you know, and oftentimes really having to characterize it as an initiative for realists. You know, this is not for dreamers, like, and idealists. Like, we live in the 42nd largest market, and there are 18 markets larger than Oklahoma City that don't have an NBA team. I'm sitting in one right now, and they would love to see blood in the water. And our lease at that time was about to expire, and we're sitting in a at that point, a $200 million arena that's 25 years old, that has the smallest square footage in the league, and we're the 42nd largest market. What about that is offering a tantalizing opportunity for the NBA? And so, you know, I had to spend a lot of time, but ultimately brought our voters to a point where 71% of them approved a 6-year 1-cent sales tax that's applicable to everybody. It's not like a hotel tax or a rental car fee or something. Like, everybody's going to pay that, but they were willing to do it. And by the way, in politics, 71% is 100%, because there's not there's 25% of people that would vote against anything, right? Like, they will not vote yes. That is not in their DNA. So really, when you get 71%, you're getting 100% of the people willing to say yes, right? So we had really a consensus in the community. People understood, A, what the team meant to the city. B, they understood, the stakes. They understood that, like, hey, like, we do have to do this. The lease is expiring, because I had gone through this education process with them. And ultimately they understand that we had to do what we had to do. And they could kind of complain about it and kind of hold their nose. I don't really care what attitude they take as long as they vote yes, you know. And ultimately they did. And we're going to open that arena in 3 years. We're going to By the way, we share an architect with Allegiant, David Manica. He will be standing on a stage with me next week, a week from today, at about this same time as we unveil the concept for it, and it's beautiful, and it's going to be awesome, and it's a great opportunity for our city. The arena doesn't just keep the team, it also gives us an opportunity, as you were kind of alluding to raise the aesthetic standard of the city and have something that's really a signature building for our community. So, yeah, selling it, obviously, is critical, and even as we were doing what we did in OKC, Kansas City failed their vote a few months later. Phoenix suburb was Tempe, failed their vote a few months before. I mean, we don't see a lot of these votes pass, so it does take like sort of the right situation and obviously maybe leadership like we had in OKC that really was dedicated to it and really willing to spend the time and political capital to walk the voters through the necessity of it.
Did you say maybe leadership? I think definitely leadership. Show of hands. How many of you live in a jurisdiction that passed a $1 billion arena with more than 71% of the vote? Right. There is no such thing. So just understand the significance of all of that. And by the way, U.S. Conference of Mayors, the year of David Holt, sports as big business, you're going to be really happy with the things that will happen because David Holt is your troubadour around the country to be able to do that. Steve Hill, talk about here and your perspective selling the vision, going from a desert town that before 2017, gambling-centric, certainly made that decision, big revenues, but how do you embrace the opportunity for major sports when there's nothing here? Gary Bettman helped, the Vegas Knights helped, but just talk about selling that vision.
Well, a couple of things. One is, Bill Foley came with the Knights and did it on his own, really. There was no public money in the arena. The arena was already a project that MGM and AEG was building, and Bill Foley paid for the team, moved the team here, and launched it exceptionally well. He integrated the team into the community, both on and off the ice, and that introduction into the community matters not only for that team, but it mattered for the legacy of what came past that, because the community saw what it could bring. The Raiders did the same thing. I mean, they made the commitment, as I said, about 18 months before the Knights hit the ice in October of 17. I first met Mark in April of 16, and they came and said, we're coming if you'll do what we need you to do, and followed through with all of that. But the other point that I was, Mark and I were kind of going back and forth with a little bit is the story here is really pretty easy. This is an economic development, tourism-centric set of projects that pay for themselves. I mean, all in the economic return on investment. The present value calculation of what the return on investment for the A's ballpark is about 300%. So it's easy. I mean, we're going to invest X amount of tax dollars a year to help pay a private or a public sector portion of that ballpark, and we're going to get 3 times that back in a present value calculation. It's really, over time, it's 525% of what we've invested. So there aren't too many communities that have the level of tourism we have to support that, and the story is tougher when it's not purely just an economic business decision. It's harder in Oklahoma City or Buffalo or in Cincinnati, where I was close to, because there is a community development aspect to it that is a little more difficult to get that message across. And as the mayor said, there are 30% of the people who are never going to think this is a good idea. A number of them are just philosophically opposed to providing funding to a billionaire owner. The problem is with mid-market cities, and mid-markets well above our size, there's not enough local revenue for media rights. Many of the leagues have localized regional media. The NFL has spread their media across all the markets, which helps the smaller markets a little bit. But you don't have the corporate base that it takes in order to buy suites. And when we were selling Allegiant Stadium, and I've said this over and over and over again, Levi Stadium had just been built without public funding. But they had twice as many suites, and they sold them for twice as much as we were able, or at least projecting to be able to sell at Allegiant Stadium. That difference was about $50 million a year in revenue. Coincidentally, we bonded $750 million. You can bond about 15 times your annual revenue, which was $50 million, which is why Sheldon Adelson and the Raiders asked for $750 million from Las Vegas. If you were going to have a major venue for a major sports franchise in a mid-market city, those mid-market cities are going to have to make a contribution to the venues. They can build them in Chicago and LA and New York without public funding because the private sector comes and buys all those suites, and there's 10 million people in a media market that are eyeballs that you get paid for on the advertising side. That doesn't happen in cities the size that we are a part of.
You know, he's really making a case for the idea that, you know, some voters think is the alternative is if you take away the public funding that you're going to have owner-funded facilities in all these markets. No, you're just going to have the teams in 10 markets and that's it.
Right. Yeah, that's right.
So really the case I made was one of pride in OKC. You know, it's like if we want to have the things that they have in LA and New York, you're going to have to pay for them. That's the only way it's going to work in a free market economy.
Just remember Holt's comment about took 2 years to educate all of your constituents into being a de facto sports business executive. That doesn't happen overnight, especially given some of the citizens that need education. Let's just put it that way. Marc,
well, you don't try to get 100%.
We don't need
some
to talk
people
about
you
that.
write off, but
right, clearly. Marc Badain, you're sitting there in 2013, I guess 13-14, that time when you took over as president of the Raiders, and they're 4-12. So you're thinking, all right, we got 2 issues to do. I did my homework. So you got 2 issues to do. Either focus on how wonderful the team's going to be, or you focus on the stadium issue, maybe greener pastures elsewhere. Talk about selling the vision. What was your vision there? I understand you try to move in Oakland as much as you possibly can, but tell me how this all came together, how we're ending up here with the football side of it.
I don't really like how you asked that question, but I'm going to try and answer it anyway. You're also really good at math. Which is nice.
Answer the question you want to answer. How's that?
You can never control team performance, right? The mayor's sitting next to me, and his team is now the best team in the NBA, and he's launching a new state. Like, you better enjoy this point in time.
Yeah.
Because you're at like a perfect inflection point,
Yeah.
and it's mostly 4-12 in misery. But make sure the term we use is celebrate the wins.
Yeah.
Make sure you enjoy it. So you can never really control team performance. But when you look at running a sports team, the differentiator, and Steve touched a little bit on the economics, is what do you drive out of your facility? And you're starting to see now the valuations of sports teams just don't really make any sense when you look at the sports team alone, right? You can't justify the purchase price of some of these teams based on what their yearly revenues and their yearly returns are anymore. They're basically less than 1% dividend stocks that you're hoping the price goes up. But what you're seeing is the team can become an anchor for a couple of things. It can become the anchor for a larger conglomerate of an entity that owns multiple teams, that owns multiple businesses that spin off from that team, or that anchors a real estate project. So if you go back to 1993, the different ownership groups that own teams around all the leagues were very different. A lot more families. The prices actually match the multiples. If you fast forward to today, you start to see what these teams are selling for. It's just astronomical. But they're valuable assets. They drive positive revenue. They can drive value towards the other developments that I'm talking about. I haven't answered your question at all. What was our vision in 2013 or 14? The team knew they needed a new building. It wasn't a mystery. the Raiders were 32nd out of 32 teams. And Mark, to his credit, was looking to do a deal. He didn't have the expectations of what was achieved by Allegiant Stadium. He was hoping to get to the middle of the pack. He wanted to build something that had a legacy, that was worthy of the Raider brand, and he was willing to sell a piece of the team at a significant discount to do it. I don't think there's a lot of owners that would do that. The gentleman I'm working for now is looking at it very similarly. John is very misunderstood in the media, and he's going to do a better job of correcting that, and I think he really has. He's not doing this for the money. He's doing this because he cares about baseball and he cares about the legacy of his team, and he wants to build something special. He didn't have to design this building that I spoke of a few minutes ago. He could have built, he could have just modeled after the last 2 or 3 buildings and hired, this is not meant as an insult to Manica because he's great and he's a really snazzy dresser and he likes Negronis, just so you know. But he could have just taken what the last couple of baseball stadiums looked like and hired those architects and just sort of copied it. Right. But he didn't. He said, I'm moving to Vegas, I got to build something special, I got to compete on the greatest skyline in the world. And he's making one of the largest private investments of any owner into a venue in any sport. So yes, the public support helped get it over, over the hill. But there's a huge private investment. So when you're looking at it from the team standpoint, in order to be competitive, in order to have the revenue streams, in order to have the facilities that are going to attract players, in order to build something transformational, in order to put something from an infrastructure standpoint that has an impact in the community, that's what every sports executive should be looking at when they're looking at where their franchise is. So the folks at Oklahoma City you should be really proud, and they should be really proud of what they built both on and off the court. In terms of team performance, you can ask somebody else.
Well, can I just real quick, a quick anecdote. When it was the summer of 22, when I introduced to the people of Oklahoma City that we even had to worry about this issue, this really wasn't on their radar. They don't think in terms of lease terms and and all of that. They thought when the team moved there that was like till death do us part, And so I had to kind of lay that out in a State of the City address in the summer of 22. The team was coming off roughly a 20-60 season. And a lot of people's reaction, it's funny how much they do get caught up in that. A lot of people's reaction to me was, boy, you're just asking at a really bad time, the team's awful. And the next season, so that conversation proceeded for another 1.5 years, basically, until we had the vote. Well, the next immediate season, they were like 500 and showing promise. And then by the time we had the vote, they were like, midway through the next season, and they were like #1 on their way to being the #1 seed that year. And obviously a year removed from winning the championship. And by the time the vote happened, people would say to me, gosh, you picked such a great time to ask for this. And I'm like, it shouldn't matter. It's funny that people didn't realize that they were saying completely different things over the course of the same conversation because the team's fortunes had turned around. But I was consistent throughout, which is this is a generational decision. You cannot be so short-sighted as to make a decision about whether you want to invest in this presence of this team based on whether they're good or not right now, because that is going to happen. That's going to change 50 times over the next 25 years. We just need to make sure, we need to do this because of what it brings to the community from the biggest picture perspective possible, not whether they're going to win or not. Of course, now, obviously, everybody thinks it was genius because they've turned into champions, and we made sure that we're well positioned to keep them for years to come. But it was just funny. A lot of people do think that should matter. I mean, I even had a council member who said, and he was not kidding, he said, if we do this, we should have a clause that requires a championship in exchange for this arena. So, and of course the rest of us were like, that's crazy, but he meant that. And so you're always going to have that faction that feels that way.
Yeah, but Dan, I just hope you understand that the 4-12 question was not a knock on your performance or that team performance. It was to inspire that kind of conversation from him and otherwise. Am I still on your Christmas card list?
Yeah, you're good.
All right, that's important. Let's shift into consensus building generally, because I think it's a broad topic. MAPS was an amazing combination, 93 and all the way through, of leverage and vision. I remember there were conversations about, you want a performing arts center, you better vote for the baseball component of this. You want some water in the river, you better vote for the convention center. Is that the largest part of the magic of MAPS? Has it transformed from one piece to another? You're able to use a bit of leverage and vision together in terms of building consensus?
Well, sure. In these conversations, I mean, where you can leverage realpolitik, you know, I mean, great. I mean, if you can have a maps type package where you're grouping it with other things, and so therefore you're satisfying multiple constituencies, that's ideal. You know, if you're able to pick up on the expiration of a tax. MAPS was a new tax. Ever since then, though, basically we've been able to say it's not a tax increase, because what we're doing now is just another extension onto a tax you're already paying. I mean, those are all advantages. I will say, I mean, one of the reasons that the arena vote 2 years ago was somewhat intimidating going into it, in addition to the fact that none of these passed anywhere, was that it was standalone. You know, there wasn't grouped like MAPS was. It wasn't an arena with a library, with a performing arts center, and all these other things. It was just an arena. So you had to take on the people that, not just like anti-tax people who would vote against anything, but also people who would maybe have voted for a different tax but aren't going to vote for a tax for an arena. So we overcame that, obviously. But yeah, no, that, I mean, anytime you can leverage, I mean, you got to have smart political people in the room for sure. These, especially when you're running votes, you need strategy and you need marketing, and you got to find the most appealing way to present these things.
Steve Hill, leverage / consensus building in your world revolves around your personal knowledge of the bed tax. I bet you know the collection of every hotel by every hour based on every rate and how dollars are allocated through the system. And it is one of your greatest assets that'll be able to satisfy the public piece of a public-private partnership, much like other major tourist-oriented communities like Orlando, but not on the scale that you guys have. So how do you balance the fact that you have tremendous political and economic leverage with the fact that everybody always wants to snipe at you and grab some of your money?
Well, we look at that as an awful lot of opportunities that come our way. But we do have a tremendous amount of financial leverage because of the scale of the tourism and hospitality industry here. When the Chargers were looking at building a stadium in San Diego, it was the same time we were looking at building a Legion here. And we came up with $750 million of bondable capacity with roughly $50 million a year of room tax, and that's 7/8% of our room tax. When the Chargers were looking at a lesser amount of money, they were going to have to raise the room tax 4%. And that's something that most of the hoteliers would not.
They didn't get 73% on that vote, did they?
No, they did not, no. So it does give us an advantage, and it's really helpful. But it was still a controversial thing. When, I mean, the idea of building a stadium and the idea of expanding and renovating the convention center were both in our legislative session in 2015, and each of those projects wanted 1.5% of room tax in order to fund them. And nobody was willing to raise the room tax 3%. So the governor pulled that out and created the committee that ultimately figured out how to basically do both projects for what they originally thought was the cost of one of them. And both of those projects was in a single legislative bill that we ran through the legislature in 2016. So it was if you like the stadium, vote for the stadium side, and if you like the convention center, vote for the convention center side. But it kind of similar sounding to performing arts centers in Oklahoma City. There were proponents for two different projects, one funding source.
If I can just jump in, I don't know what your next question is, but both those answers lead me to something, because I just saw him out of the corner of my eye. When you start talking about building a consensus and building support, there's going to be a lot of players and a lot of people and constituents. And one of the fortunate partnerships that we were able to develop was with UNLV. And former President Jessup is sitting in the audience, and the vote doesn't pass without him. I mean, there's a lot of people running around town taking credit for Allegiant Stadium. You guys are giving me credit, but there's thousands of people that were involved in that project. And it was another benefit that the stadium could provide, which was finding a solution for the university. So they needed that as well. And the whole stadium project that Steve was talking about, the genesis of that was to try and find a solution for UNLV. So we were just fortunate in that the timing worked out perfectly, and you had this confluence of events, and then you had all the people that actually mattered getting behind one or both of those projects that Steve mentioned.
Let me redefine the curveball a little bit relative to consensus, because I was going to come after the other sport, which is how easy was it to get consensus among Major League Baseball owners? We know relocation is kind of tough relative to the antitrust exemption and all that. You have to keep people informed and bring them along and tell them not only is there no choice, but this is a great choice. And so that happened, I assume, organically?
Well, look, I've only been on the job 4 months, so I can't tell you everything that went on in Major League Baseball, but most league commissioners and most league offices, the health of all their franchises matters, because you're only as strong as your weakest link. And so they need to address any of the franchises that are in struggling stadium situations. And the A's spent the better part of 10, 20 years. They started looking at a stadium project in Oakland before the Raiders did, going back to 2005. So it was a 20-year quest to try and find the right solution. And Major League Baseball, I think, obviously was very helpful in finding this ultimate solution, and is very excited about the project that's being built here in Vegas.
We're wrapping up, but the last question I want to give everybody here is the prediction of the future. David Holt has the ability to answer this a little better, because he is by far the youngest at this table, and he has 70 or 80 more productive political years ahead of him. So give us...
In the current dynamic, yeah, it looks that way.
Excuse me? What did you say?
I mean, you're still young to be president.
I wanted to just hear. So give me your sense of where Oklahoma City is and David Holt is 10 years from now.
Well, I don't know about me. I just got to live day to day. But the city, you know, I mean, obviously we think that we just experienced one of the most important milestones that a city can have in its progression. And the most recent one before that was the arrival of the team in 2008. I mean, for most of us who love the city and know its history and have experienced it before and after, that feels like a moment in time where there was before 2008, before the arrival of a big league city status, and after 2008. I mean, everything's different. The food scene's different, right? The population's different. The diversity of the economy is different. Everything is different. Now, you know, winning a championship is an accomplishment of sports immortality that just opens all these other doors that I mean, if you're not really a sports fan, all of this seems crazy. But the reality is that most Americans are sports fans, and so they understand it. You know, go pick up The Economist off the newsstand here in the hotel or at the airport this week. We have a feature in there that declares that Oklahoma City is, you know, a city that's forever changed, and it's talking about all of our progress over 30 years, but that story wouldn't have even been written if we hadn't won Game 7 by 12 points, right? If we'd lost Game 7, that story wouldn't have happened. And similarly, 50 other stories across other media outlets around the country and around the world wouldn't have been written. So it is a sports accomplishment, but it becomes a prism through which people you know, view our city's progress. So to answer your question, we're at the cusp here. We're at the beginning of a new moment, a new chapter in our city's history. So I think 10 years from now, I think we'll have grown a lot. I think we might be looking at, you know, we're about to invest in a soccer stadium. We're about to embark upon a new chapter. So, you know, maybe by then we're having a conversation about the MLS or something. But I think for us, it feels as if the momentum has been only moving in one direction the last 30 years, and with a new arena coming, an NBA championship, the Olympics coming in 2028, certainly the next 10 years look just as bright, if not brighter, than the last 10 years, because now we're at a point where everybody is paying attention to us, and these are amazing moments, and I assure you we are definitely enjoying it, and we intend to capitalize on it, and we think it's a moment that will last for years to come.
One gratuitous comment, 4 Thursday nights ago, Game 1 of the NBA Finals and Game 2 of the College Baseball Softball World Series. There were 11.5 million eyeballs, actually 23, whatever it is, 11.5 million people tuned to television sets about Oklahoma City that never would have been tuned to the city, and it's just an amazing testament to David and others' political and other leadership. Steve Hill, your 10-year prediction, where are you and where's the city in 10 years?
Well, One thing I'll say is there aren't all that many cities who are willing to say yes to what Oklahoma City and Las Vegas are willing to say. And it's an advantage that we're planning to capitalize on. I'm sure you are as well. There are a few others out there, but most other places, when folks want to build big things and make big ideas happen, the risk is there that it won't work. And that risk is mitigated in a few cities in the United States, and 2 of them are represented up here today. That matters a lot. On top of that, for Las Vegas, our vision, and we think we're there, we're just trying to expand this, is to be a category of 1. We think we are. There's no other place on earth that is like Las Vegas. And there is no place like Las Vegas for an event. Because the event itself can happen all across the globe and do, and they're great events. But the experience around it is just different here. And what we're seeing when folks are coming to us looking for money are people who want to bring their events here, bring their teams here, bring whatever they want to do here, because the city helps to elevate that. And as long as we continue to know how to say yes and execute on that commitment, the next 10 years are going to be bright. I think we're going to have the World Series here within the next 10 years. I think we're going to have an NBA team here within the next 10 years. I'm sure, folks out there with ideas that I haven't even thought of that are going to make them happen in this city. So it's a very bright future for Las Vegas right now.
Bold, to be sure, but legitimate defensible predictions. Marc Badain, A's, you, 10 years?
I think I'd just piggyback. I mean, I hope I'm sitting in the ballpark in the outfield watching the World Series in 10 years, but hopefully it's sooner than that. I think I would just piggyback on what Steve said, and this city is one that's evolved a number of times. You talked about it being a gaming town. It's been an entertainment town. Now it's the sports and entertainment capital. And this city just knows how to attract things. In 10 years, I think you'll see events that don't exist right now on a massive scale using the scale that exists here. So we've talked in the past about having, just call it sports super weekends. So events at all the different facilities, all coming together at once, all working together to bring huge numbers of people to town for these spectacular weekends, whether it's football, baseball, basketball, hockey, boxing, UFC events, other large-scale sporting events, bringing multiple events here over a period of time, whether that's a full week or a 2-week event, and just having these massive amounts of people come to town and have everything all in one place, because it's so easy to navigate, it's so easy to get around, and the infrastructure is supportive of it. So I think you'll see some new, call them super weekends or super weeks, start to develop and really emanate from Las Vegas.
You're going to blame me. Sorry, but we had a powerhouse group here. We have time for one question. Sir.
On your point you just made, what comes to mind is South by Southwest, where you can combine sports and music. They generate about $350 million, I believe, in that 21 days. So that comment you just made is perfect fit for combining both and also having a lot of content just like this.
It's a great idea.
Yeah. Well, and just in November, we will have Formula One here for that weekend before Thanksgiving. But the Raiders play on Sunday. We have the Neon City Festival that which is a big music festival downtown that same weekend. That kind of thing we can replicate on a pretty regular basis.
There will be different lanes, to be sure, for all of you guys as far as the sports assets, but it would be interesting, like a UFC cage fight, to stack you guys up in a room and have you compete against each other. That would be a very interesting thing, although we're not even going to talk about that. And I think Oklahoma City has an amazing vision, and Las Vegas has an amazing vision, and the beauty of that is they are incredibly compatible. These are, from my perspective, the two growth cities in the world relative to sports, business, political leadership. Another special shout out to the second annual U.S. Conference of Mayors Legacy Sports Award winner, David Holt. Thank you again very much. Marc Badain, thanks a lot for your time. Back on your Christmas card list, even if you're not going to be on mine. And Steve Hill, the same way. Thank you all very much. And thank you all for coming. Rick Horrow, really appreciate it. Speak with you soon.
Thank you, Rick. Thank you all.